It's conventional wisdom that a second term of Donald Trump will be a disaster for Palestinians because the first one was. And it's true, Trump in his first term was manna from heaven for the religious Zionist right. Settlers had a permanent seat in the White House in the form of Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law, or David Friedman, the American ambassador to Israel. Trump upended decades of policy by recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and moving the US embassy there. He disenfranchised the Palestinian Authority by closing down the Palestine Liberation Organization office in Washington. He allowed Israel to annex the Golan Heights. He pulled out of the nuclear accords with Iran, and he assassinated Qasem Soleimani, the most powerful Iranian general in the region. Even more damaging for the Palestinian struggle was Trump's sponsorship of the Abraham Accords. This was, and still is, an attempt to pour concrete over the grave of the Palestinian national cause, constructing over the heads of the Palestinians a superhighway of trade that would make Israel the portal to the wealth of the Gulf. On the 6th of October 2023, the day before Hamas attacked, the Palestinian cause was all but dead. The Palestinian struggle for self-determination felt like the baggage of an older generation of Arab leader, which was being unceremoniously dumped by their heirs. If that charge sheet is not long enough, it could easily be argued that Trump's second term will be even worse for Palestinians than the first was. This time around, and with the Republican Party projected to have control over both houses of Congress, there'll be no adults in the room to correct the president's wildest impulses. Friedman has just published a book arguing that America has a biblical duty to support Israel's annexation of the West Bank. So won't a second term of Trump bring more territorial changes that will bury a Palestinian state, like the annexation of the West Bank, the permanent division, resettlement of Gaza, the clearing of the border area in Lebanon? All this could come to pass under a second Trump term with no breaks. I do not for 1 second underestimate the sacrifice in blood that Palestinians have already paid and could yet pay for all that is about to come. But Trump, in his first presidency, brought about two other changes that few other people talk about. In throwing America's weight behind the settlers, he buried the Zionist dream of a liberal democratic state. This had been the main vehicle for Israel's territorial expansion for decades. It did it quietly, in salami slices, but cumulatively, liberal Israel brought about the biggest settlement of the West Bank in Israel's history. That's gone now. Religious extremists, once branded terrorists, have gone from the fringe of Israeli politics to its mainstream. There are more of them running the army too. The second change that the first Trump presidency brought about took place in Palestinian minds. A whole generation of Palestinians born after the Oslo Accords came to the conclusion that the political pathway to ending the occupation was blocked, and there was no longer any sense in recognizing Israel, let alone trying to find anyone in it to talk to. Trump's big boast during his first term of office was he made all these changes and the sky did not fall in. But the sky did fall in on October the 7th, the day Hamas attacked, and everything that Trump and Joe Biden had done before that contributed to it. After the Hamas attack, it was impossible to ignore the Palestinian cause. It had moved from the periphery of global human rights causes to its very center. If the Israeli state fundamentally changed after the 7th of October, so too has the Palestinian mindset. The scale of the killing. The official Palestinian death toll from the war has so far exceeded 43,000, and the real count could be 3 times higher, and with a degree of destruction rendering most of the Gaza Strip uninhabitable. All this has crossed red lines for the Palestinians. From now on, there's no talking to a state that does this to your people. And just remember, the only 2 votes in the Israeli parliament, the Knesset, that secured a unanimity amongst Jewish Israeli members of Knesset included legislation to veto a Palestinian state and a law banning UNRWA, the UN agency for Palestinian refugees. In such extreme conditions, there are only 2 alternatives: to do nothing and die, or to resist and die. And hundreds of thousands are choosing the latter. Consequently, Hamas is now at its height of popularity in areas where the Muslim Brotherhood was on October the 6th at its weakest, in the occupied West Bank, Jordan, Lebanon and Egypt. Walk around Nablus's old city and ask people who they support. The answer will not be the defunct Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. It will be Hamas, a group prescribed in the UK and other countries as a terrorist organisation. Would Kamala Harris have made any difference? I doubt it. So we've ended up with Trump once again. Trump now has a clear choice when he assumes power next year. He can either carry on where he left off and let the settlers annex the West Bank, or he can do what he told Muslim leaders he met in Michigan, which is to stop Netanyahu's wall. Either path is strewn with elephant traps. Letting Netanyahu achieve total victory would mean, in reality, the ethnic cleansing of 2/3 of the occupied West Bank, with a huge refugee influx ending up in Jordan, an act that would be seen in Jordan as a cause for war. It would mean the expulsion of Palestinians from northern Gaza and the permanent destruction of southern Lebanon, with the assumed right of Israel to continue bombing Lebanon and Syria. Each and any of these actions would lead to more war, which Trump has pledged to stop. But forcing Netanyahu to stop the war, in the way a strong Republican president like Ronald Reagan forced Israel to stop the bombing of Beirut 4 decades ago, would also have consequences. It would stop the religious Zionist project in its tracks. It would feed the growing dissatisfaction within Israel's army's high command, who've already said they've achieved all they can in Gaza and Lebanon and now want to pull out. 1 year on, there is no credible project to install a government in Gaza that would allow the withdrawal of Israeli troops. The moment they do, Hamas re-emerges. In all these calculations, we assume that leaders make the difference. They may not anymore, because the real agency in this conflict lies with the people themselves. And that's as true in Michigan as it is in Gaza. Never before in US electoral history has Palestine been a factor in turning the youth vote away from the Democratic Party. Henceforth, no Democrat leader wishing to rebuild their coalition can ignore the Palestinian, Arab and Muslim vote. It may be that Joe Biden is the Democrat Party's last Zionist leader. The irrational, quixotic, transactional Trump will only accelerate the destruction of the status quo in the Middle East that he started in his first term. With much help from Netanyahu, Trump has already killed the dream of a Zionist liberal democracy that lasted for 76 years. This is an achievement in itself. His second term may only hasten the day the occupation finally ends.